All right, today we are joined on the Barrel Proof Baseball podcast with Brett Merritt. Brett is a pitching coach in the Boston Red Sox organization. Brett has made some really interesting stops on his coaching journey that he's going to get into here a little bit. He's definitely a part of the growing trend of coaches going from college baseball into professional baseball. So it's really cool to talk to guys that have a similar kind of path in baseball as myself, and Brett is definitely one of those guys. So I'm really looking forward to hearing kind of a little bit more about that path, that journey to where he's at. So Brett, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm pumped.
So you and I met, I think you were at Eastern New Mexico at the time, right? What year was that?
I believe so. It was maybe at there was a clinic or something in New Mexico, and I think we were both attendees at the clinic.
Yeah, it had to be probably when I was at UNM, 14 or 15, somewhere in there.
Uh-huh.
So we both have some ties in the state of New Mexico. So so Brett and I have known each other for a little while now, and worked a lot of the same camps, done the camp circuit together, and definitely had some fun times doing those camps together. So first and foremost, what are you drinking today?
A very adult drink today. It's a Mick Ultra, but it's infused with lime and prickly pear cactus. So the usual Mick Ultras I'm not a big fan of. And actually, when I was living in New Mexico, my roommate at the time turned me on to these. So it's a nice light alternative beer here to kind of feel a little adultish and healthy.
Yeah. It's low carb or low something. I don't know. I haven't had beer in so long, so I've been on whiskey.
I was gonna say, I remember the last time I hung out with you was at the Albuquerque airport, I believe, and we both happened to be there at the same time, and we caught a beer, I think, right before we parted ways.
Yeah.
But I still, when I'm going easy and kind of in chill mode, I still have a brew every now and again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I went with the Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye. It's a nice little middle of the day, relaxing type drink.
Very sophisticated.
I try. I'm 40 now, so I'm gonna try it. I know. So, all right, let's get into some of your baseball journey. So, just talk a little bit about some of the stops that you've made. I mean, you've been junior college, Division II, Division I, now into professional baseball. So talk a little bit about your journey, up until this point.
Right. Mixing an NAIA stop in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Coached college. I believe by my count, I did that for 12 years. Did some smaller schools. And, when you're at those schools, sometimes there's job changes, there's transition. I went to one of the Florida junior colleges I was at. I was so excited. Lake City Community College. I had Roberto Perez, who's the starting catcher for the Cleveland Indians right now. And that school canceled athletics when I was there. So there was a period of time for me where I was moving around a lot. I did 3 summers in the New York Collegiate League, and I was shuffling back and forth between Ohio, Florida. I came out to Roswell, New Mexico. I coached at New Mexico Military Institute for 1 season. That was kind of my introduction to New Mexico. I went back to New York, did a couple more years in Florida at Santa Fe College. I went back up to Ohio. I spent 2 years at University of Toledo, volunteer assistant there, and then ended up my next stop was at Eastern New Mexico University, Division II school. And so that's where we met. And I was in the land of enchantment for 5 years, coaching there. And it was a really great opportunity for me at the time. And then came back to Central Florida Junior College and was really lucky to walk into a great situation. We had a lot of great kids and a lot of buy-in. And I learned a lot from those kids that year I was there. And then really I was at CF for less than a year, and I think I had 3 pro teams reach out to me. I had the Pirates, Astros, Red Sox, all kind of asked, just kind of to inquire what we were doing with the pitchers there and what was kind of separating us.
You did. I mean, you've been a pitching coach, you've been a recruiting coordinator, and then you were a head coach in summer ball, right?
Yeah, oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah, I did a summer in West Palm Beach at the in the Cressy League there, and I was the head coach there. So that was a really cool experience for me too. Yeah.
How do you feel like those like different roles that you've had kind of help prepare you for, getting the opportunity to be with a professional organization?
Yeah, I think just wearing a lot of different hats and doing a lot of different things. And I was lucky, I think, when I first started coaching, someone told me that most coaches, like, you're going to spend about 10 years doing a lot of things you don't want to do to get a job that you really want. And so, there's a lot of jobs along the way where I can remember coaching junior college, and I'm working in the gym, and I'm working in the office of admissions, and then I go to Eastern New Mexico, and I'm doing the compliance, the academics, I'm mowing the field on game days, and I mean I'm just doing a lot of different things, and so I think what it taught me was, and working with different positions and stuff at all these stops, is just um, not only to be flexible, but I became a big believer in teamwork and team chemistry, and that also applies to coaching with other coaches, and a certain amount of respect that you have to pay coaches when you work with them, and things that help the team chemistry. So I think that helped me right away, because going into pro ball, I wasn't sure the expectations or what exactly my role was. I knew I was gonna coach at high A, but I didn't quite have a full grasp on what would be going down at spring training and things like that. And so I had to be flexible. I had to be humble. I had to listen. And those are things really I've done, my whole career, is like, hey, here's a problem and how can we solve it? Not, what do I know or where have I been? So getting into pro ball, and, very lucky to be there. But yeah, I just think all those stops along the way, I almost treated them like I was a player. Like I always said, every coach has something to teach. And when I was a, assistant really for 12 years, and one summer I was a head coach, but you just try to pick everyone's brains, and try to learn as much as you can, you know.
Did you have like interest in going and coaching professional baseball, or was that something that like the opportunity came up and you couldn't pass it by, or was that a goal of yours?
No, I think for me personally, like when you get into coaching, uh, especially at the very beginning, you're not doing it for money, right? Because there's just no money right from the jump for most of us. So I got into it just kind of realizing I could help some guys out a little bit, and getting good results at some small schools. And then, I think what really gave me some belief in myself was going to coach summer ball and coaching kids from all over the country, and having kids from bigger schools, and seeing good results, like being, flexible there. So it was never a goal of mine, like, hey, I want to coach professionally. I never played professionally. It was, I love baseball, I wouldn't be doing this, but it was not, my intent. I think just kind of what happened is, got caught coaching for a long time, and then, you start to get the interest, and it's like, I know Tony Horton is one of my heroes, like the P90X dude, and he's always like, results are made outside the comfort zone. And I found myself at CF, I was in a really great spot. Like I felt like that was my niche. Like I'm coaching pitchers, I'm recruiting. I thought it was really easy to recruit to Florida, and we had a good program. That last year I was there, we were number one in the country for a good point of the year, and I was really comfortable, and I did not pursue any pro opportunities. All three of those teams were proactive in contacting me, but I just think that when it came about, it was a challenge, and it was like, almost a little scary. But it's like, man, if I, this is like a next thing for me. This is a challenge, and the question is always, if I got into coaching to help players, can I still get to the pro level and kind of carry that attitude, right? So now, I'm their player development, and it's especially at the minor league level, it's not about who can win, it's about who can help players get better. So I took it as a challenge, and to make myself a better coach. And I don't know, I'm excited. Last year was my first year, and we only had those 10 days at spring training. So it was a little interesting because I didn't know what to expect. And then we got into fall, and I was able to work at the Instructs and do that for 6 weeks. So that was nice to finally get to be able to work with some guys and see some changes and stuff. But yeah, no, it was never my goal to coach professionally, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you said two things I really want to touch on, or one thing that I really want to touch on, and then kind of take it into a different direction. But like you mentioned that you didn't play pro ball. I mean, I have maybe 10 days of independent ball under my belt, so obviously I'm an experienced veteran at that level. But there's a lot of guys I'm seeing that are getting into professional baseball that have been in our shoes with coaching college ball that played in college but didn't go and play pro ball. How was that for you? Was there a intimidation factor getting into professional baseball, knowing that you're coaching guys that are really higher than a level that you had been at? What was that like for you in that transition?
I don't know. I think from a very young age, I guess, like my dad is actually a Hall of Fame baseball coach in the state of Ohio. And he's a well-known dude. And he had some kids come out of his high school program that went on to play pro. And one of his friends was actually a coach for the Cleveland Indians. The coach's name was Dave Nelson. Well, Dave had a son that was a similar age of mine, and when his son was in town in the summer, I would get to hang out with him. And a lot of times that meant just running around the old stadium and being in the clubhouse. So even though I didn't play professionally, or come from that family, like I got the experience of kind of being around the clubhouse, and I got to realize that pro athletes are just people just like everyone else. There's a couple really cool moments of guys reaching out to me and making me feel welcome, even though, my dad didn't play pro baseball or whatever. I was just there hanging out, just being a kid, and they were just there being baseball players, but still good people. So I had that kind of experience. And then, I don't know, I kind of lost track after a while, but I would say somewhere around 40 kids or so that I've coached in college have gone on to play pro ball. And so I just knew, like, I kept in touch with those guys, and I had heard stories about, how the life is of a pro baseball player and things like that. And so I think going into it, maybe I should have been intimidated, but I wasn't. And I think maybe it just says a little bit about the culture and things of the Red Sox. Like most players are there, like they want to get better, so they want to be coached, and they're always open to new ideas. And so I thought that the environment, not only from the players but the coaching staff, like everyone made me feel welcome, and it was a cool experience.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to look at it because, you get into pro ball, it's your first time. I wasn't sure. I didn't know what to expect. That was the intimidating part for me, was I didn't know what to expect. Kind of the same as your experience. Like the people that are there, that are around our organization, just great people. They're really helpful. I think they understand that it's your first time. You don't know what you don't know yet. But I think the intimidation came from more of the unknown than necessarily being in pro ball. But I've heard from people that are trying to get in that, I'm intimidated because I didn't play. And I don't think it necessarily has to be a super intimidating thing to get in there. But I was just curious kind of how that came about for you. But the other thing that you had kind of mentioned about coaching at different levels, and I'm with you. I coached the freshman and high school team. I've done the summer ball. Like, I think our paths have been very similar. Do you feel like, going through those steps that you went through, do you think that those were more beneficial for you versus, just what it is now? A lot of guys are using Twitter as their resume, mm-hmm. and, tweeting out their stuff and their, like things that they're doing maybe with their schools or their programs, or kind of their own individual thoughts, using that for getting jobs versus necessarily like being with a team or with a school and showing that success, using that success to springboard them on into whatever other career they want to be on. But do you feel like actually being in those different spots that you have been at help prepare you better for where you're at now?
Which, by the way, I forgot another stop. I coached a 16 under team one summer, but
okay.
So I've been a little bit everywhere and worked my way up. Man, yeah, that's a little tougher question, man. Uh, Shoot, man. The Twitter game, I'm kind of new to it. When I was at Toledo, I started the Twitter for the team. When I was at Eastern New Mexico, I started the Twitter for the team there, and like no one kind of knew about it. And I spent a lot of time. So think about that. That's 7 years of my life that I spent promoting the program where I worked, and I was just like not even active. Like I may have had an account, but I didn't even know the login. So I think when I got to CEF, it was a big part of the team culture where the head coach interacted with the players and also had a lot of updates. Marty Smith is a big social media Twitter guy, a presence that a lot of people know. And so I had to like figure out my login and get back in. And, in those 2 years or so now that I've been on Twitter, there's just a lot of stuff going on, man. And some people have some really good information, and some people just put a bunch of stuff on there to get clicks and retweets. And then some people, I don't know what the heck they're thinking when they put stuff on there, but Twitter is a really interesting place. And I think that, all the social media stuff, like your experience is what you make it. So if you get on there and sometimes there's some really cool chats and some good ideas, just like when you and me would work camps together, right? And I did a clinic here a couple weeks ago, and every time I go to work one of those things, like I try to learn something new. Like hopefully when the other coaches are talking about pitching and I hear something that I didn't think about, like, hey, we teach our pitchers to do this with the changeup, or well, we don't like this or that. So just that growth mindset. So there is that stuff on Twitter that can be there, and young guys or old guys alike. Like it's kind of cool to me when the old cats get on there and they're dropping knowledge or they're interacting with the early 20s coaches and things like that. Like that stuff's awesome. And then I do think that I've heard that before, that like some people look at Twitter and things like that, and they're just like they're looking for talent, they're looking for coaches, but that none of that stuff kind of played a factor with me. I think it was just more word of mouth that CF had really developed that reputation as being a really progressive program where they were trying new things out in development. And two of the coaches that were there before me got hired by the Twins, and so it was just became like this is kind of an interesting spot to be, And that's where the interest came from, was just our program had some good success, and I was there for a very short time. So a lot of that's due to the people that were there before me and the head coach, Marty Smith. But people were definitely interested in how I was, using the Rapsodo and some of the other technology and applying it and using it with our kids.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting because I think there's a place for it. I mean, there's definitely a place for Twitter and the information that's being shared. Some of the conversations are outstanding, and then you just have the other side. You have the people that are just there to hammer people and just crush their opinions. And, sometimes it's funny, but other times it's like, well, provide something. If you're gonna, hammer on people, like provide something that's of use. But I always find it interesting how, people who have been in colleges where you have to win, you have to go and produce players and you have to develop them and move them on, whether it's from a junior college to a four-year school or from a four-year school into professional baseball. I just think there's a lot of people that are trying to skip some steps right now, and trying to use social media as like their means to do that. So I'm just, I guess it's just interesting to me kind of where we're at, especially right now, like in the age of COVID, and whether it's in coaching or whether it's in, players with getting recruited. I think the whole kind of social media thing is very odd right now, but
I grew up in Ohio, so naturally I was an Ohio State football fan, or I still am. But I had heard once when Urban Meyer was there that he required all the assistant coaches there to tweet once a day. And the reason why is just the free advertising and kind of speaking to the audience, which all the kids are on social media at some point. So I do think that there's some benefit and some merit there for programs that do it. I can see how it can be beneficial with recruiting to kind of have your stuff out there. And then, like you said, there's some good and some bad, just like with anything,
Yeah, I agree. So you had teams reaching out to you, and kind of the Red Sox were the ones that either you pursued more heavily or they pursued you more heavily. And you mentioned Rapsodo. Like, I'd like to get into some of the technology stuff that you were familiarizing yourself with as well. But kind of talk about that process with the Red Sox a little bit. What was that like for you going through that hiring process?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where, just started with a couple of phone calls, just real basic conversations, just, asking, would I be interested in pro ball and things like that. And I got to be honest, like it took a little bit of them convincing me that it would be a good opportunity. I wasn't, like I said, I was very comfortable at CF. I wasn't ready to just jump ship for the first thing that came open. Kind of started the Red Sox were interesting. Like, they were just kind of hot and cold the whole time. Like, I heard from them. The very first team that ever contacted me was the Pirates, and man, they had I think I talked to over a dozen people on the phone, and so I had some really cool conversations. And then things progressed a little bit, and then pitching coach job came open with the Astros, which was in West Palm Beach. And I've always been a big beach guy, so I was pretty gung-ho trying to do that. And they did I remember they used some type of an app to interview me. So it was just like a Zoom call, but there wasn't anyone there. Like, the question would pop up, and then I'd have 2 minutes to respond. And that was an interesting application of technology right there. So I'm like, I've never done this before. How do you talk to a computer screen?
Yeah.
And then the Red Sox thing, finally, they man, I want to say it was right before Christmas, they hit me up, and I'm living in Florida, and my family is in Ohio. And so I think, I have my flight the 23rd. I'm going to fly up to Ohio to see my family or something like that. And so they hit me up on the 20th, like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything tomorrow. They're like, how'd you like to come up to Boston? I'm like, yeah, sure. So just like that, it was like, boom, I have this 2-day window. So I remember I checked my closet, went to put on the suit I had. It was a little tight, so I had to go to the store. I picked out another suit. Really wasn't sure what to wear. I called a couple people, and I just kind of came to that conclusion. I was going to wear a suit. So I went to the mall. I got a suit. I had to drive. I decided I was driving down to the Tampa airport that night. I got locked out of my car at the mall. Had to wait for someone to come unlock it for me. Drove down to Tampa, got a hotel. It was like a 6 a.m. flight or something like that. So I got, I got 4 or 5 hours sleep. I get to the airport, and my flight got canceled. And they're like, oh, it's there's bad ice, and there's no chance to reschedule or anything. It's just canceled. I was supposed to fly up for the day and come back. So I just sat at the airport. I text the people that had paid for my flight. Hey, my flight's canceled. What do you want me to do? And 2.5 hours later, when normal people wake up, they text me see if you can get one tomorrow. So I'm like, this is my last day in Florida. So got my flight changed to the next day. Drove an hour and a half back up to Ocala, packed all my things for winter break, drove back down to Tampa, and got another hotel room for the night. And then the next morning I flew up to Boston, and it was like a bam bam 1-day thing. It was really awesome, man. I got to fly up there, got to interview at Fenway Park, which was just so freaking cool. But got to meet with a lot of different people. Got a quick lunch, got to meet with the people analytics, coaches, different people in player development. And actually I got to sit in Tony La Russa's old office, which was also cool. Super cool. So it was just a lot of, as a baseball historian and fan, there was a lot of cool stuff going on, and it was such a great experience for me. And I remember, because I had done the video interview with the Astros, and I had had so many conversations with the Pirates, I remember leaving man, I killed that. Every time they asked me a question, I had already been asked that question before. So it was really an easy, smooth time. And I feel maybe personality wise and stuff like that, I really clicked with some of the dudes. So I left having a pretty good feeling that at least it was a good interview. And if it didn't work out, that I was going to get another job offer pretty soon. Like I felt like I handled myself well. I knew what I was talking about. So it was an awesome experience, man. It was really cool.
That's cool. It's always fun hearing about guys getting into pro ball, especially for the first time and going through that process, because it seems like different organizations do it differently. So it's pretty cool. Like I'm sure it was fun flying up and getting out to Fenway and being a part of that. Yeah. So once you get hired, you've made the transition. Like, what has that transition overall been like? Has there been any, what are the biggest differences between college ball, professional baseball? Were there any surprises? Like, were there similarities that you were maybe not expecting? What's that kind of been like?
I think a lot of things went how I expected them to be. Maybe not how I wanted them right away, but like, they're, the usual stuff, right? Like you go through all the contract stuff, you get your login from IT, you get your email, which I'm like, wow, my email says Red Sox. Like, that's really cool. Like, like stuff like that. And then, probably the biggest like question mark for me was kind of how spring training was going to work. But I was really lucky. Like, we're just super, even though it was my first rodeo, it was not everyone else's. So we were super well organized, and they kind of had accounted for the fact that I'd never been a part of a spring training before. So, even though it wasn't like specifically like I was shadowing someone, there was always someone. If there was a chart or a drill or anything, like all the dudes in the Red Sox organization are just great dudes. And so it was easy for me to just be humble enough and like ask questions like, hey, why are we doing this? Hey, when we are doing this, like, what should I be doing, interaction wise and things like that. And then technology wise, just adjusting to the different metrics and things that that they were looking at. So, it was a total learning experience for me, and in spring training goes super fast. And for someone that's never been there, and then we just had those 10 days and then the world kind of came to a pause, but it went super fast, man. It was a lot.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So have you come across anybody in any capacity with the organization that's been like significantly more impactful on you or done anything that's really stood out? And I will preface this for me as obviously like the amount of staff that we have and the people that are around. We have so many people that have helped us out. But like I've always told people, and I'm now it's with you guys, but last year in the AZL, Kike Hernandez came down and played with us, and he was rehabbing from an injury. And we're in the AZL, and we've got kids that are 17 to 20 years old. A lot of them their first time playing professional baseball, and the way that dude played the game was unreal. He was flying around the bases, going first to third, and the reads he was getting on the base paths, and just the overall effort he put in, where you see a guy that's in the big leagues, and he's had a nice role with us for a few years now, obviously with Boston, but you're watching him play with a bunch of 17 to 20-year-olds, and like he's playing harder than anybody on the field, both teams included. And it was really cool to see like a guy that our guys were looking up to come down and play with them, alongside them. And just the example he set by the way he played, I thought was so awesome for our guys to see. And so for me, it was almost like I need to make sure I'm expecting that out of our players, because here's a guy that just won a World Series and he just got paid. Like, if he can do it in the AZL, I promise you can too.
Yeah. Just for me, I would say, obviously like the coordinators and stuff, they have their roles and telling everyone where to be. And so that, I got to talk to most of the coordinators and stuff coming into it, but the game changer for me, or like what really helped, was just the other pitching coaches. Like, being the new guy there, I felt like, and being from a different background, like they didn't have to help me, but I felt like, like those guys just went above and beyond to let me know, just like the little things, man, the things that I just had no idea about, like the charts, like where to keep stuff, and like, just locker room stuff, like anything baseball wise. I mean, there was a lot of things. I think from a coaching standpoint and a communication standpoint, I was like, I'm super ready to crush this. But I just, like you said, there's that big unknown, that scary part of like, well, I don't know how this is supposed to go, or, like whatever, like meeting schedules, just different things. And it's hard to explain without even being there, but there's just way things need to be done or whatever. And those were the things that, man, I would not have survived without the other coaches, and so, not even necessarily the pitching coaches, but just everyone in general, just being really friendly and going out of their way, just kind of to help me out, man.
It's awesome. I mean, it's cool when you have such just like great people that you're surrounded by. I mean, we feel the same way. We've got great people that are always willing to help out, and it makes you almost, when you're not the new guy and there is a new guy there, like, that you can reach out to them if they need help, knowing that they're probably going to want to know, some of the things that you went through as well that can help them out. But I know you are a big, you're a Driveline fan, or just technology in general, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
How you mentioned the Rapsodo, when you're in Central Florida, like how have you seen the increase in technology or some of the training programs like Driveline, or whatever, core velocity belt, or any other training type programs that pitching, especially pitching, has started to use? Do you think that stuff is pushing things in a better direction, or is it helping overall pitchers? Like, I know when I've stood in on bullpens, it's gross, and I don't want to. I'm so glad I'm not a hitter and I'm 40 and I don't need to be near that, because I just feel like everybody throws hard and their stuff is filthy. I just feel like guys are really, really good right now, and I have to wonder if all this technology and all this other stuff is really helping make guys that much better, or are guys just better athletes right now? Like, where do you see the place for the tech, for those types of programs that are going on, and where do you see that going and pushing the game forward?
Yeah, I think it's just like a combination on a lot of things you just touched on. But oh my gosh, yeah, the pitchers are so gross now and so nasty. And I remember, I'm trying to think of someone like when I was in high school, like Billy Wagner or Jose Mesa, like the closers throwing like 96, and people are like, those guys throw so hard. And I grew up idolizing Nolan Ryan and stuff too, and obviously Nolan was 100 or whatever, but those guys were, you could count on one hand, and now it's like you turn on the TV to watch a big league game and every single no-name dude coming out of the pen throws fuzz. Like, it's absolutely amazing, and yes, there's more to baseball than just throwing hard, especially for pitchers, but it's mind-blowing how hard guys throw now. And so, yeah, I think a combination of better training, figuring out how to implement tech. I think that the philosophy has changed a lot. I remember being in college and my coaches calling me into the office and telling me that I was lifting weights too much. Like, now it's like, most college programs are going to consistently lift, year round. I mean, and so, those kids start with that and then they get into college. And so just better training, better tech, and I don't think, I think that things are just evolving. It's just like our world right now, it's evolving. Some things are never going to change, and some things are just going to constantly evolve. And so, yeah, right now with the tech and stuff, I mean, man, every kid has some type of social media, right? So that's my big thing, is communication. Like, this guy saw this drill on Instagram, this guy saw the Rapsodo on Twitter, and now he wants his curveball to look like this guy's curveball and things like that. So it's important for me, as a method of communication, to stay up on all that stuff. So when my kids come to me, I understand what they're saying, right? Like, speak the language of your players. And then I think a big part of, like, my role is to look at the technology, and instead of giving them a bunch of numbers that they don't understand, it's like, how can I put this in a really simple thing, that a kid can understand? And, maybe you have a kid that doesn't buy into tech, but he's a really competitive kid. Well, maybe if I make a leaderboard, then he'll want to be at the top of the leaderboard, like stuff like that, really simple stuff, right? That we had leaderboards when we were in middle school basketball or whatever. It's just like, there's stuff that's just going to cycle back and forth. And I think that the use of technology and, like all the stuff with cameras right now and pitches and stuff, like it's just bringing baseball full circle. Like all the old school guys will tell you that they used to have weighted balls or throw softballs, or I remember a story of Nolan Ryan. They said he'd take a softball and pound nails into it to make it heavier to long toss. And, so people have been doing this stuff a long time, and I think it's just getting more organized, and there's a better path and a better direction for it. I think that, you hitting nuts, you guys took a lot of stuff from like the golf guys. Like golf game was ahead of us, like measuring the swing path and the angle and the speed, and then the hitters caught on to that in baseball, and now it's like our pitchers need to make adjustments and combat, those things that you guys are working on. So it's just like it's going to be a constant back and forth thing. Baseball will always be the game that we grew up loving. It's just, it's just going to change, man. And that's just life. Things change sometimes.
Yeah, you mentioned like evolving, and remember a year or 2 years ago, went down to Tucson, and Brent Strom was down there speaking about pitching, and the guy's 70-something years old, and he's speaking a language that some of these younger coaches are really trying to master and have an understanding that he has. And I can assure you, at 70-something years old, things have changed throughout his career, but he's evolved as well. And I see that with like our pitching coaches, some of the older guys, you guys that have been around, and you see that, all throughout baseball. I mean, the good coaches, the ones that are pushing their careers forward, are able to evolve a little bit faster than others, and then the tech. And that's where my question always comes in. Like, that's where I always kind of doubt things, not doubt, but like I want to clarify. We can have numbers, we can have, all the data, we can have all this stuff available to us, but it always comes down to how are you using that? How do you make those numbers that you have access to relevant? Because the numbers alone by themselves don't speak the whole story.
Correct. And sometimes those things are imperfect too.
Yeah.
The human element will always play a little bit of a part in it, for sure. But Brent Strom, I was fortunate. I met him my senior year of college. I flew down to the Texas ranch there with Ron Wolforth, and those guys are some heroes, man. They probably didn't realize it at the time, but they changed the path of baseball and for pitchers, for sure. So yeah, I got down there, and I remember sitting down at the hotel breakfast with Brent and asking him a couple questions and picking his brains. And I remember there was a chart that I wanted or something, and he was really personable and nice. Like, he gave me his email, and sure enough, like 2 weeks later, he shot me the chart that I was asking about and things like that. So like I said, to see the guys like that have been in the game a long time and see how their thought process has evolved and how they can continue to communicate and come up with new ideas and better ideas and things like that. Like, wow. I mean, that just, really just says a lot about them and really kind of like the type of coach that I'm aspiring to be.
Yeah, I think just like what you said, when I saw him afterwards, I'd asked him for a copy of his presentation. I don't know anything about pitching. They're trying to get us out. But his presentation was awesome, and I wanted a copy of it. And I asked him for it, and he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I was like, "Hey, I want to give you a heads up. Like, I want you to know I'm with the Dodgers." Like, I didn't want to, make it seem like I was trying to, go around it and get information that, he was privy to that we weren't. And he looked at me like he could not care less. Like, go ahead, you can have all my stuff. Like, you're not going to teach it like I am. He didn't say that, but it's like, there's a point where having that information is great, but being able to relay that information to the players and make it relevant for those guys in your own words, in your own communication style is really what matters most, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, last thing. College baseball, I'm going to compare the two a little bit. What do you miss the most about college baseball? And what do you enjoy the most about professional baseball?
That's so easy, man. In college baseball, I just miss that. Well, right now I'm missing the personal everyday interaction, right? And the JUCO games are actually going on here in Florida. But the recruiting process, like getting to know someone and then watching them grow as a person and as a player, I mean, that is just so cool. I think that, like, you show up to school in August and you already know who this kid is because you've been talking to him, and then you get to watch him take your advice and hopefully get better, at least as a person or in the classroom or whatever. I think that the academic stuff, like, I can think of a couple kids that came in as poor academic students in high school or JUCO and had their parents come to me and say that those were the best GPAs they'd ever got in their life. And it was like putting emphasis on study habits and study hall, like stuff like that. It's so cool. But then now to flip it to the pro side, oh my gosh, these kids are all so talented. And, there's no doubt, like, the guys in pro ball are there because they want to be there, right? Like, I mean, everyone has their own path to get there or whatever. And now I've been fortunate, I think, now in the off season, as I start to build a rapport and I have a call list, there's 10 guys that I talk to, and some guys I connect with more than others, but some of those kids, I mean, it just, I don't know, like, that human element of connecting with people will always be the highlight for me, man. And I just hope these kids know that I'm their biggest fan, and I just want everyone to succeed. I think the hardest part about being a coach is seeing kids struggle or fail. So I don't think kids realize that, man. We just want those guys to do well.
Yeah, I could not possibly agree with you anymore. That's perfectly said. So, Brad, I appreciate you jumping on here with me, man. It was great catching up with you. It's been too long.
It's been great, brother. Yeah, we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again.